How to End Racism. This is a bold and an ambitious proposal, I know. But hear me out because I have a good reason to be hopeful. I grew up in Zimbabwe during a time when apartheid was the scourge of Africa. Zimbabwe too was still a newly independent country back then. So, the stain of racism still lingered through stubborn reminiscences of segregation. In my childish mind, raised on Christian ideals, I used to wonder how much suffering mankind had to inflict on each other before God stepped in. Growing up as a witness to such evil, unscrupulously displayed, was disheartening to say the least. But I was also hopeful because Zimbabwe happened to be entering its prime back then, after suffering a similar affliction. Fast forward to the 2020s, we are certainly in a better place since we can celebrate the end of apartheid. Today, while we benefit from humanity's general intolerance of inhumane behavior, the seed of racism, the notion that one race is superior to another, manifests in an elusive manner. Today's racism involves underhanded tactics used to destabilize or hinder the progress of other races. Racism today manifests in the form of actions that cause or trigger racial tensions by puppeteering the racial egos or cultural pride of minorities. Unwarranted attacks aimed at defaming inspiring or rising figures from another race. Actions that nullify or mute the voice of another race. The refusal to give meaningful credit to individuals of another race. Evading solutions by finding ways to nullify genuine public outcry against racial injustice. And the callous indifference to the grievances of another race. All these actions are a manifestation of an indirect refusal to share any glory with other races. And that, essentially, is racism. So, the racism of our time plays out in psychological, intellectual, political, and economic arenas. And it is intentionally convoluted to frustrate anyone that may try to spot it or call it out. Regardless of what race you belong to, you would find it illogical and unjustified if someone diminished your value or undermined your path to prosperity because they did not like the color of your skin or your tribal origins, right? That is because both racism and tribalism and even gender superiority originate from irrational ideology. They are different flavors of the same ill, and that is the obsession with superiority. The immodesty of the idea that one race is superior to another is in that such an ideology seeks to go against what God has created with equal value, and that is mankind. Therefore, racism is bound to create turmoil within God's kingdom because all men and women are fundamentally and equally free in His kingdom. When we temper with an individual's freedom, without proper cause, we temper with the balance of life. Racism, tribalism, and gender superiority all temper with this balance on a large scale. This, I believe, is why our world is in turmoil. Racism is born out of a genetic ego that is itself a byproduct of spiritual blindness. It takes more than ignorance to simply hate another race. It takes radicalization of our natural differences to create hate or racial intolerance. In the context of racism, hate is an irrational emotion that derives its justifications from opinions held or formed in the absence of truth. And the truth, as the Declaration of Independence notes, is that we are all created equal and with rights that cannot be taken away by anyone that wishes to enjoy the same freedoms. This suggests therefore that racism is a crime against the fundamental nature of humanity. Since the hate that manifests as racism stems from opinions formed in the absence of truth, the only way to end racism is to change the way we see each other by returning to the foundation of truth. Only the truth can eradicate any arbitrary justifications for racial or gender superiority. Behind every man, woman, or child, there is an impulse towards freedom. Freedom does not imply superiority over others. What freedom means is that we have the right to pursue life freely. But in doing so, we all share the responsibility to maintain life's balance by not infringing upon the freedoms of others. Perhaps God does not always intervene because He wants us to mature in spirit. He gave us the clue that the truth will set us free. Since the hate of racism is formed in the absence of truth, knowing that the truth is the key to ending racism gives me hope. My hope in sharing this with you is that you too can see the hope that awaits us in embracing the truth that goes beyond race. And that the truth about our intrinsic nature is the key to ending racism. I really hope you can see that. Thank you for being willing to hear what I had to say. If this message leaves you feeling encouraged, I would be grateful if you can help me share this message to elevate humanity. With love, from Tapiwa, aka Taps.